A new girl walks into a school full of strangers, expecting nothing more than a fresh start. But what happens when those strangers decide she doesn't belong? Will she let their hate define her, or will she prove them all wrong? Let us know in the comments section below. Melina Howard stood at the entrance of Ridgeway High, her hands curled into fists inside the pockets of her hoodie. A deep breath, then another. The school was bigger than her last one, but that wasn't what made her stomach twist into knots. It was the way people stared. She could feel their eyes on her, studying her, judging her. A group of girls huddled near the flagpole, whispering behind their hands. A tall, blonde girl at the center of them smirked, her gaze raking over Melina like she was sizing her up. Melina ignored them. She was used to this. A new school, new people, the same old looks. She had been through it before. Being the only black girl in the room, the hushed conversations when she walked past, the way some people hesitated before speaking to her like she didn't belong. It was nothing new. She adjusted the strap of her backpack and started toward the main doors. Just get through the day. That was the plan. No trouble, no drama, no fights. The halls were packed with students, voices blending into a chaotic hum of laughter, gossip, and lockers slamming shut. Melina moved quickly, slipping past groups of kids who barely noticed her. The smell of cheap perfume and cafeteria food clung to the air. She kept her head down, her fingers tightening around the schedule crumpled in her hand. Her first class was English, room 205. She found it easily, but before she could step inside, a voice stopped her. "Hey, new girl." Melina turned. The blonde girl from outside was leaning against the lockers, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. Two other girls flanked her, one with fiery red hair, the other with loose waves that barely touched her shoulders. "Madison," the blonde said. Her voice was sweet, too sweet, like syrup poured over poison. "You lost?" Melina didn't answer. She had met girls like Madison before. They didn't come at you with fists. They didn't have to. They used words, whispers, and laughter to cut deeper than any punch could. "No," Madison's smirk widened. "Then why are you just standing there?" Melina held her gaze, unreadable. The redhead giggled. "Maybe she doesn't talk." The other girl snorted. "Or maybe she's just slow." Melina exhaled slowly through her nose, fighting the familiar heat rising in her chest. Not today. She wasn't going to let them win on the first day. She turned without a word and walked into the classroom. Madison's laugh followed her inside. Melina found an empty seat near the window and sank into it, willing herself to disappear. She wasn't in the mood for more introductions, more fake smiles from kids who had already decided she wasn't one of them. She had barely pulled out her notebook when someone slid into the seat beside her. "Don't let them get to you," a voice whispered. Melina glanced over. A girl with warm brown eyes and dark curls pulled into a ponytail offered her a small, knowing smile. "Elena," she said. Melina hesitated, then nodded. Melina. "Yeah, I know. Everybody does," Elena said with a roll of her eyes. "Madison made sure of that." Melina sighed. "Figures." Elena leaned closer. "She's just mad you exist." Melina raised an eyebrow. "And why's that?" Elena smirked. "Because you don't care." The bell rang before Melina could respond. The teacher started the lesson, but Melina barely listened. Her thoughts were elsewhere, already counting the minutes until she could leave this place. Lunch. It was the worst part of the day. The cafeteria buzzed with unspoken rules. Where you sat mattered. Who you sat with mattered even more. Melina took her tray and kept moving, not stopping long enough for anyone to tell her she wasn't welcome. She found an empty table near the back and sat down, poking at the pile of something on her plate that was supposed to be pasta. A shadow fell over her. "I wouldn't sit here if I were you." Melina didn't even look up. "Madison." "Is that a warning or a threat?" Melina asked, her voice cool. Madison chuckled, sliding into the seat across from her like she owned the place. Jessica and Ashley followed, grinning like they were in on the joke. "You tell me," Madison said, tilting her head. "You're new here, so maybe you don't get how things work. There's a system, a pecking order." Melina stabbed a fork into her pasta. "Sounds exhausting." Jessica scoffed. "She thinks she's funny." Madison leaned forward, voice dropping just enough to be heard over the cafeteria noise. "You don't belong here." Melina met her gaze unbothered. "Then I guess you're just gonna have to deal with it." Something flickered in Madison's eyes, a crack in the mask. Melina had seen it before, the moment when a bully realized their tricks weren't working. Madison recovered quickly, her smirk returning. "We'll see." She stood, grabbing Melina's cup of milk, spilling it across the table before walking away. Jessica and Ashley laughed, following her lead. Melina watched the white puddles spread across the table, soaking into the sleeve of her hoodie. She could feel the eyes on her, waiting to see how she would react. She grabbed a napkin and wiped herself off. Then she picked up her tray, dumped it, and walked out of the cafeteria. Not angry, not embarrassed. Just done. And that was what bothered Madison the most. Melina Howard sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling, her earbuds drowning out the world. The events of the day played on a loop in her head, but she refused to let them settle in. She wouldn't give Madison the satisfaction of getting under her skin. A soft knock at the door pulled her out of her thoughts. "You okay, kid?" Her father, Derek Howard, stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, his sharp eyes studying her. He always knew when something was off. Melina shrugged. Same old, same old. Derek leaned against the doorframe. "That bad already?" She hesitated, then sat up. "It's just some girl trying to make my life miserable. Thinks she owns the school." Derek smirked. "Ah, that type. What's her deal?" Melina sighed. "She's rich, popular, blonde, hangs with her little minions and thinks she's untouchable." Derek let out a low chuckle. "Sounds like the villain from every bad teen movie." "Right?" Melina shook her head, but the weight in her chest wouldn't lift. "I don't even care about her. It's the way she's got everyone else eating out of her hand, like they actually believe her nonsense." Derek walked over and sat on the edge of her bed. "People like that, they feed off of reactions. You don't give them what they want, they lose their power." Melina exhaled, rubbing her temples. "I didn't. She tried to humiliate me and I just walked away." He nodded in approval. "Smart." "Yeah," Melina muttered. "Except now she's pissed." Derek studied her for a moment. "Come on," he said, standing up. Melina frowned. "Where?" "The garage." She groaned. Derek raised an eyebrow. "You want to keep sitting here, or you want to do something with all that frustration?" Melina didn't answer, but she got up and followed him. The garage was their gym. The heavy bag hung from the ceiling, the mats were laid out, and the air smelled faintly of sweat and old leather. Melina had been training with her father since she was 10. At first she thought it was just for fun. Then she realized it was for survival. "Hands up," Derek said. She wrapped her fingers around the worn-out boxing gloves, tightening them before raising her fists. "Footwork," he instructed, circling her. "Light on your toes." Melina moved, shifting her weight, her muscles remembering the rhythm. Derek tapped the side of her arm. "When people push you, they expect you to push back. But you wait. Let them waste their energy, and when the moment's right..." He threw a slow punch, and she ducked, moving under him and stepping to the side. "You make your move," he finished. Melina smirked. Yeah, I know." Derek grabbed the mitts and held them up. "Then show me." She threw a jab, then another, quick, controlled. "Good," Derek said. "But you're still holding back." Melina narrowed her eyes. She knew what he was doing. He lowered the mitts. "What's the real reason you walked away from that girl today?" Melina exhaled through her nose. Because it's not worth it. Derek tilted his head. That all? Melina's jaw clenched. Derek stepped closer, his voice even. You weren't scared, were you? No. The answer was immediate. He studied her face. Then what? Melina's hands tightened into fists inside the gloves. Because I know what happens when a black girl fights back. Silence filled the garage. Derek's expression softened. You're not wrong. He took off his mitts and set them aside. But don't ever let that stop you from defending yourself. Melina swallowed hard. I wasn't going to let her win. Derek nodded. Good. He motioned toward the heavy bag. Now hit. She did. And this time, she didn't hold back. The next day, Melina walked into school with her head high. She wasn't going to let Madison think she had won. She found Elena by the lockers, rummaging through her bag. Hey, Elena said, glancing up. You good? Yeah, Melina said. You? Elena hesitated. Depends. You check your phone? Melina frowned and pulled it out. Her stomach twisted at the sight of a new message from an unknown number. It was a picture of her in the cafeteria. Caption, Poor little lost girl. Can't even fight for her seat. Melina let out a slow breath. Elena's voice dropped. Madison's been spreading it around since this morning. Melina locked her phone and shoved it in her pocket. She's really desperate for attention, huh? Elena gave her a sideways glance. This isn't normal. Melina shrugged. It is for people like her. She turned toward her locker, ready to move on with her day, but the moment she opened it, she stopped. Inside, her books were gone. In their place, a single banana. Her stomach went cold. The hallway noise seemed to fade. She stared at it, the meaning behind it loud and clear. Slowly, she closed her locker. She turned, and there was Madison, standing at the end of the hall, smiling. Jessica and Ashley giggled beside her. Melina's blood boiled, but her face stayed neutral. She walked right past them. Oops, Madison said as she brushed by. Guess someone forgot their lunch. Laughter followed her down the hall. Melina clenched her jaw so tight it hurt. By the time lunch rolled around, Melina had made up her mind. She wasn't going to let them control the narrative. She grabbed a fresh tray and walked straight to the same table she had sat at yesterday. Madison's table was right in her line of sight. For a moment, everything was normal. Students talked, laughed, ate. Then Melina pulled out a banana from her bag and peeled it, slowly. Then took a bite. A long, slow, deliberate bite, and stared straight at Madison. Silence rippled through the cafeteria. Madison's smug grin twitched. Her eyes flickered just for a second, but Melina caught it. And just like that, the game had changed. Melina knew what was coming before it even happened. The shift in the air, the way the whispers followed her through the halls like a shadow, the lingering stares that weren't just curiosity anymore, but something else. Anticipation. Madison wasn't done. If anything, Melina's refusal to break had only made things worse. Elena caught up with her between classes, her expression tight with worry. You heard? Melina didn't even look up from her locker. What now? Elena glanced over her shoulder before lowering her voice. Madison's planning something after school. Melina shut her locker with more force than necessary. Of course she is. Elena hesitated. You sure you don't want to? I'm not running, Melina interrupted. Elena sighed. I figured you'd say that. The final bell rang, and the weight of the day settled in her chest. Melina exhaled slowly. If this was the moment, she was ready. The courtyard was full when she stepped outside. Students leaned against the walls, gathered in clusters near the benches, phones already out. Waiting. Melina's jaw clenched. She spotted Madison immediately, front and center, like she had been waiting for this all day. Jessica and Ashley stood beside her, wearing matching smirks. Melina adjusted the strap of her backpack and kept walking. She was 3 steps away from freedom. Just 3. Then Madison's voice rang out. "Yo, new girl, you forgot something." Melina stopped. Slowly, she turned. Madison pulled something from behind her back, a crumpled hoodie. Melina's hoodie. Recognition clicked, and her stomach tightened. It had been in her locker this morning. "How'd you get that?" Melina's voice was calm, controlled. Madison smiled, playing innocent. "Oh, this. Found it lying around. Thought I'd return it." She held it up, then dropped it onto the pavement. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Melina took a breath. A slow, steady breath. Madison tilted her head. "What? No thank you?" Jessica nudged Ashley. "Guess she's too stuck up to say anything." Melina didn't move. He didn't blink. The game had gone too far, and Madison knew it. Madison took a step closer. "You know, I've been wondering something, new girl." Melina met her gaze. "Yeah?" Madison smirked. "Why you always act so tough when we all know you're not?" A flicker of something dark passed through Madison's eyes. Jessica snickered. "Bet she won't even pick it up." Ashley whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's 'cause she knows her place." Melina felt the shift in the crowd. The unspoken rules of bullying. This was the test. Madison wanted her to react, to get angry, to lunge, to swing first. Melina didn't. Instead, she bent down, not to pick up the hoodie, but to tie her shoe. A hush settled over the crowd. Madison's smirk faltered. "What the hell are you doing?" Melina stood up, dusting off her hands. "What does it look like?" Madison's face reddened. She was losing control of the moment. "You're really just going to walk away?" Melina met her gaze. "Yeah." Then she turned. Madison lunged. Fast. A hand grabbing Melina's backpack strap, yanking her backward. A collective gasp from the crowd. Melina's body reacted instinctively. Her heels stomped down, hard, onto Madison's foot. Madison yelped, loosening her grip for half a second. That was all Melina needed. She turned, twisting free, stepping back just enough to keep her balance. Madison's expression twisted with rage. "Oh, so you do want to fight?" Melina exhaled through her nose. "I don't want to fight you, Madison." Madison charged anyway. Melina sidestepped. Smooth. Effortless. Madison stumbled forward, nearly falling on her face. The crowd roared. Jessica and Ashley looked panicked. Madison whipped around, furious, eyes burning. "You think this is funny?" Melina shrugged. "I think it's sad." Madison swung. A wild punch, sloppy, angry. Melina saw it coming a mile away. She ducked, then stepped behind her. A single, smooth movement. Madison spun around and froze. Melina was right there, standing close, too close. For the first time, Madison hesitated. Melina didn't smile, didn't gloat, just stared. Then, quietly, she said, "We're done here." And she walked away. Just like that. The crowd erupted. Jessica and Ashley rushed forward, grabbing Madison's arm, whispering urgently. But it was too late. Everyone had seen. Madison Whitmore had tried to humiliate Melina Howard. And failed. The school was different after that day. It wasn't obvious at first. The whispers still followed Melina down the halls, but now they weren't laced with mockery. They were filled with something else. Respect. Curiosity. Maybe even a little fear. Madison, Jessica, and Ashley weren't in their usual spots by the lockers anymore. They had retreated, their presence no longer as suffocating. They still held on to their social status, but it was slipping, and everyone knew it. Elena was waiting by Melina's locker before lunch. "You're kind of famous now," she said with a smirk. Melina raised an eyebrow. "Famous?" Elena nodded toward a group of students down the hall. One of them, a freshman, made eye contact with Melina, then quickly looked away. "People keep talking about what you did. How you didn't even have to throw a punch to shut Madison down." Melina pulled out her books and shrugged. "It wasn't the plan. I just wanted her to know she couldn't break me." "Well, message received," Elena said, loud and clear. At lunch, Melina didn't sit alone. She and Elena took their usual spots, but this time, other students joined them. A couple of kids from her history class, a girl from the track team, even some juniors who had never spoken to her before. It wasn't an apology for how they had ignored her before, but it was something. Madison walked in late. For the first time, she didn't have the same confidence when she stepped into the cafeteria. She still had Jessica and Ashley beside her, but their usual smugness was missing. They sat at their table, but the difference was clear. Nobody cared about them the way they used to. Madison's eyes flickered across the room until they landed on Melina. For a long moment, neither of them looked away. Then, without a word, Madison dropped her gaze first. Melina took a bite of her food and kept talking to Elena like nothing had happened. Days passed, then weeks. The school settled into a new rhythm, and, for the first time, Melina felt like she belonged. It wasn't just about Madison losing power. It was about Melina taking hers back. She was no longer just the new girl, no longer the easy target. People knew who she was now. But more importantly, she knew who she was. One afternoon, as Melina was walking to her locker, she noticed Madison standing there, waiting. Jessica and Ashley were nowhere in sight. Melina slowed her pace, her guard instinctively rising. Madison shifted, looking uncomfortable for the first time in her life. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice quieter than usual. Melina crossed her arms. "Okay." Madison hesitated. "Not here." Melina studied her for a second, then nodded. They walked to an empty hallway near the gym, away from listening ears. Madison took a deep breath. "I was wrong." Melina didn't react, waiting for her to continue. Madison glanced down, as if the words were difficult to say. "I thought if I controlled everything, nobody could ever make me feel small. I guess that meant making other people feel small instead." Melina leaned against the wall. "That sounds like a you problem." Madison let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, it is." Silence stretched between them. Madison shifted her weight. "I know I can't undo what I did. I'm not asking you to forgive me." Melina raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you want?" Madison swallowed. "I just wanted you to know that I get it now." She hesitated. "And I'm sorry." Melina studied her for a long moment. She wasn't sure if Madison had truly changed. Maybe she never would be. But that wasn't Melina's problem. Madison had to figure that out for herself. Melina pushed off the wall. "Good luck with that." She turned and walked away. Madison didn't stop her. That night, Melina trained with her father in the garage. The heavy bag swung as she jabbed, stepped back, then threw a clean cross. Derek nodded in approval. "You're getting sharper." Melina exhaled, rolling her shoulders. "Feels like it." Derek studied her. "School getting any easier?" She thought about it. About the whispers that had faded. About the respect she had earned. About the weight that had lifted off her shoulders. She threw another punch. Smiled. "Yeah," she said. "It is."